One key move I think the Clippers could make that no one's talking about that could improve their title chances is that the Clippers going out finding an elite three-point shooter. Now, the one thing we talk about with their point guard situation when we speak on Russell Westbrook and Bones Highland, and maybe you can even throw the combo guard in there, Terrence Mann, if they decide to play him at point some point in time during the season, the efficiency from the arc is not really a high priority, or it's not really in high regard, because you don't have marksman three-point shooters out there. Your best three-point shooter to me, honestly, percentage-wise might be Kawhi or PG. You know what I'm saying? Then because at some point you had Luke Kennard, which he was one of the best three-point shooters there. But when the Clippers had him, they had point guard issues. They didn't have the point guard they needed. You know what I'm saying? So now they got the so-called point guard they needed in Russell Westbrook and Bones Highland. Now you're missing that elite three-point shooter that can offset a lot of things that other teams do against you, especially when you have to go against a team in a 7-game series within the playoffs. And that's going to really, hurt the Clippers in some situations where they got to make a lot of extra adjustments because they don't have that elite shooter that I think that can, like I said, offset some things the other team does, especially when Kawhi and PG sit down, they're not shooting at a high clip or they're not scoring at a high clip. So that's the reason why I said a couple seasons ago, and I still say it now, the Clippers have an opportunity still to go out and find one like a Buddy Hield. I think Buddy Hield, the prime example, is one of those type shooters that the Clippers can get that would, better their chances of winning, because to me, when you win championships, at times it's really good to have an elite shooter from the three-point arc who can not only, give you that extra person that you can count on as a third best player at times, but there's also times, like I said, where Kawhi and PG might not be playing that great. And you got a guy like that who can just, marksman carve a team up from three, and a team, their defense doesn't really change much when you have an elite three-point shooter in there, because whether Kawhi and PG sitting down or not, there's still a shooter in the game where they have to either put a double team on him or they have to account for him at all points, which it allows other players to, get free cuts to the, back door to the basket, and maybe allow Zubac to get more one-on-one, opportunities in the paint where, it's not, 2 or 3 big men in the paint, trying to out-rebound him because somebody's running out to the three-point line constantly because you have a deadly shooter out there. And I'm not saying that's going to be the case in every game, but at the same time, that's the case in a lot of NBA games you look at, whereas when a team has an elite shooter like that, it just kind of makes the defense always weary. Even though the superstars are sitting down, it's like, well, we still have to account for him because he can, if hypothetically, if the game is tied, if the Clippers had somebody like Buddy Hield, he can untie the game and go on like a streak or a stretch where he hits like 2 or 3 or 3-4 three-pointers back to back to back to back. And now the Clippers on a 9-0 or 12-0 run with Kawhi and PG sitting on the bench because they got that elite of a shooter in there with all those guys surrounding him that's athletic. Because when you think about Kenyon Martin Jr., Russ, and, Terrence Mann, they got a lot of, athletes on the Clippers. I mean, athletic guys who really can go in there and just, show their athleticism and play both ends of the floor. And, of course, Norman Powell is a shooter. He can knock down shots. But Norman Powell, he's more of a scorer to me, really, actually, than a shooter. He can just flat out score. He gets to the rim, layups, jump shot, threes. He just does a little bit of everything. But to me, having that elite shooter at your own helm is really going to be, key for the Clippers. That's why I think if the Clippers really jump off this James Harden BS and go out and find maybe a floor spacer like that, elite shooter, almost like the likes of a Buddy Hield or somebody like that, I think it would make them so much more better as a team, because now you're taking more pressure off Kawhi and PG to score a lot, because they got a guy who can go out there and give you 5-6 3-pointers each game. He can go out there and take 5-6 3-pointers every game, every night, and you count on him hitting 3 to 5 every single night. And you know that 15 to 20 points is what he can get at any point in time. And that really helps the offense more too, because you have somebody like Russell Westbrook in there who's really not efficient from the 3-point line. It makes up for his deficiencies. And Bones Highland, he shoots maybe a little bit better than Russ from the 3-point line, but it'll make up for his too in regards to his non-high shooting percentage from the 3-point line. So that's what I'm saying. Like, I think the Clippers really need to invest in that, because you got your big man and Mason Plumlee, the backup big man. I think, they're good with Zubac unless they decide to, do something else with him. But I think they're good there. So, I mean, the big man, the 5 position is there. You got all these wing players that's athletic. You got Kawhi and PG. You got all this athleticism and all these guys who can really, play, really play both ends of the floor, with their athleticism and move and their length and all their disruptions and things like that. But having that elite shooter would put you over the top, because, as I said, you'll have somebody out there that teams have to account for at all times, whether Kawhi and or PG is sitting down at the moment getting a rest. And then you got to look at it like this. There's times where Kawhi and PG, they sit down and they have a lead of 5 or 10 points, right? But then there's times where you look at them where they have a lead of 5 or 10 points when they sit down. But when they come back in the game, there's a lot of times they're down 5 to 10 points because they can't sustain leads sometimes when Kawhi and PG sit down, because they take so much onus of the offense that they don't really have a guy that can go out there and put the nail in the coffin at times when it's not them two. And this is what I'm saying. You want to have an opportunity where when Kawhi and PG sit down sometime with a 10, 15 point lead, if you got a marksman shooter in there who can just shoot lights out, that lead might still be 10 to 15 points, but by the time they're well rested and come back in the game in the fourth quarter, rather than times where they come back in the game in the fourth quarter and they got to sit there and do some heroics and help the team come back and keep things afloat, or the other team tied it and now the momentum has shifted. You don't have to worry about that as much if you got a marksman shooter out there, because he can either stretch the lead or maintain the lead at what it is. So when Kawhi and PG come back well rested, they can just put the nail in the coffin and finish the game off. But hey, that's my take on everything. Leave any comments and we'll talk about it.